The Lost World. The twin suns hung low in the sky, casting long golden shadows across the endless sea of sand. Dr. Evan Cross adjusted his visor as a gust of hot wind rushed against his face, carrying fine grains of dust that clung to his equipment. He stood at the edge of an ancient ruin, its jagged spires piercing the horizon like the bones of a forgotten giant. This was why he had come, to find answers buried in the sands of Torvek 7, a planet whispered about in myths but dismissed by most as a barren wasteland. Evan wasn't like most explorers. For years, he had followed fragments of legends and obscure data logs, piecing together clues about an advanced civilization that vanished without a trace. Now, after months of solitude and relentless searching, he had found something. The entrance to a long-forgotten structure lay partially hidden beneath a dune, its massive stone doors engraved with intricate, glowing symbols. "This has to be it," Evan murmured to himself. He activated his wrist scanner, which emitted a soft hum as it analyzed the door. The readings were erratic, fluctuating between unknown energy signatures and faint signs of life. He frowned. Life signs? Impossible. A sudden noise broke the silence, a faint, rhythmic vibration. Evan froze, his heart pounding. The sands shifted beneath his feet as if something far below the surface had stirred. He scanned the area, but nothing moved except for the shimmering waves of heat rising from the dunes. Swallowing his unease, he focused on the task at hand. The symbols on the door seemed to respond to his presence, glowing brighter as he approached. Evan reached out cautiously, his gloved hand brushing against the cool stone. The moment he made contact, the ground trembled violently. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, and the doors began to part with a grinding sound that echoed for miles. Behind the doors lay a vast chamber, its walls lined with towering columns carved with more glowing symbols. In the center of the room stood a raised platform, and atop it was an object that made Evan's breath catch. A crystalline sarcophagus, shimmering like a frozen waterfall. Inside, a figure lay motionless, her features obscured by a faint blue light. Evan approached slowly, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. The figure inside the crystal wasn't human. She was tall and slender, with elongated limbs and delicate features. Her skin seemed to shimmer faintly, even in her dormant state. Evan's mind raced as he tried to process what he was seeing. Could this be one of the lost Torvakians, a living remnant of a civilization thought to be extinct for millennia? The artifact on her chest caught his attention, a small glowing disc embedded in the crystal. It pulsed faintly, as if it were alive. Evan's instincts screamed at him to be cautious, but his curiosity was stronger. He reached for the artifact, his fingers hovering just above its surface. The moment he touched it, the chamber erupted in chaos. The glowing symbols on the walls flared to life, bathing the room in an eerie light. The ground beneath him shook violently, and the sarcophagus began to crack. Evan stumbled back as shards of crystal fell away, revealing the alien woman's face. Her eyes, closed moments ago, now flickered open. They were a deep, luminous gold, filled with confusion and pain. Before Evan could react, a low, guttural growl echoed through the chamber. He spun around, his flashlight sweeping across the shadows. Something moved in the darkness, something large. The growl grew louder, closer, until a monstrous, insect-like creature emerged from the shadows. Its chitinous body gleamed under the light, and its many eyes locked onto Evan and the awakening figure. "No, no, no," Evan muttered, backing away. The creature let out a deafening screech and lunged forward. At the same moment, the alien woman gasped, her voice a mixture of alien syllables and a single word that Evan could understand. "Run." The chamber descended into chaos as the creature attacked, its claws tearing through the air. Evan grabbed the artifact, his mind racing as he dodged the creature's strikes. The alien woman, though weak, raised her hand, and a burst of energy shot from her palm, sending the creature staggering back. Evan didn't wait to see what would happen next. He grabbed the woman's arm and pulled her toward the entrance. "We have to get out of here," he shouted, hoping she could understand him. As they ran, the sands outside began to swirl violently, forming whirlwinds that threatened to consume them. Even glanced back to see the creature emerging from the ruins, its piercing shriek echoing across the desert. The alien woman stumbled, her strength fading, but she gestured toward the artifact in his hand. "You hold key," she managed to say, her voice strained but clear. "Protect, or all lost." The words sent a chill down Evan's spine. Whatever he had stumbled upon was far bigger than he had imagined, and he was now a part of it. As the suns dipped below the horizon, casting the desert in twilight, Evan knew one thing for certain: his journey had only just begun. The awakening. The air was heavy with a strange hum, an unnatural resonance that seemed to pulse from the walls of the ancient chamber. Evan Cross knelt beside the alien woman, her luminous golden eyes flickering as though they were trying to focus on a memory long forgotten. She was awake, but not fully. Her breaths were shallow, her skin shimmering faintly like moonlight trapped in glass. For a moment, Evan couldn't move. The realization of what he had done, what he had unleashed, pressed down on him like the weight of the desert sands above. She wasn't just an artifact to be studied or a relic of the past. She was alive, and her awakening had stirred something ancient and dangerous. "Who are you?" Evan whispered, his voice barely audible over the low hum that filled the chamber. The alien woman tilted her head, her gaze locking onto his. She opened her mouth, but the words that came out weren't in any language he recognized. Her voice was soft yet commanding, the syllables melodic yet sharp, carrying a weight of authority. "I don't understand," Evan said, shaking his head. He tapped at his wrist scanner, activating the translator. The device chirped, trying to decipher her speech, but it only returned fragments. Betrayal. Weapon. Imminent. Suddenly, her expression changed. Her golden eyes widened in alarm, and she grabbed his arm with surprising strength. "Leave, now," she said, the words broken but clear enough. Before Evan could respond, the ground trembled violently. Dust and debris fell from the ancient ceiling, and the faint hum escalated into a piercing wail. The artifact he had taken from the sarcophagus glowed brighter, its light pulsating in rhythm with the vibrations. "What's happening?" Evan shouted, struggling to keep his balance. The alien woman pointed toward the entrance, her voice urgent. "No time. Danger comes." As if on cue, a series of clicking sounds echoed through the chamber, followed by a low guttural growl. Evan turned toward the source of the noise and felt his blood run cold. Emerging from the shadows was a creature unlike anything he had ever seen. Its body was insect-like, with segmented armor that glinted under the flickering light. Multiple legs moved in eerie synchronization, and its many eyes gleamed with a predatory intelligence. "What the hell is that?" Evan muttered, instinctively stepping back. The alien woman staggered to her feet, her movements slow and labored but purposeful. She raised a hand, and a faint glow emanated from her palm. The creature hesitated, its growl turning into a clicking snarl as it shifted its focus between her and Evan. "They come for key," she said, her voice strained but resolute. "Must stop, or all end." Evan looked down at the glowing artifact in his hand. It pulsed like a heartbeat, its energy sensing with the strange tension in the air. "This thing. They're after this." Before she could answer, the creature lunged. Its speed was unnatural, a blur of chitin and claws hurtling toward them. Evan barely had time to react. The alien woman thrust her glowing hand forward, releasing a burst of energy that struck the creature midair, sending it crashing into a nearby column. "We can't stay here," Evan said, grabbing her arm. "If there's more of those things, we're dead." She didn't resist as he pulled her toward the exit, but her gaze lingered on the artifact. "Key. Must protect," she murmured, her tone both a warning and a plea. They stumbled into the open desert, the night sky above them, now illuminated by strange auroras that danced like spectral flames. The swirling sands around the ruins seemed to move with purpose, as though alive, blocking any clear escape route. Even looked back at the alien woman, who was leaning heavily against him. "What is this thing?" he asked, holding up the artifact. "Why is it so important?" She took a shaky breath, her voice barely above a whisper. "Key to weapon. Great power. It falls. Wrong hands." She didn't finish the sentence, but the fear in her eyes said enough. A chilling screech pierced the air, louder and closer than before. Evan's heart pounded as he turned to see more of the insect-like creatures emerging from the dunes, their numbers multiplying with every second. "This just keeps getting better," he muttered, gripping the artifact tighter. The alien woman looked at him, her gaze steady despite her weakened state. "Run," she said, her voice firm. "But not far. Must find core. Stop before they awaken it." Even frowned. "Awaken what?" She didn't answer, but her eyes drifted toward the horizon, where a faint glow pulsed in the distance, an unnatural light emanating from beneath the sands. Whatever it was calling to the artifact in his hand. Even exhaled sharply, his mind racing. He had come to this planet searching for answers, but now it seemed he was part of a story far larger than he could have imagined. With the alien woman by his side, and the creatures closing in, he had no choice but to follow the light, and hope it led to salvation, not destruction. A race against time. The desert was alive. Not in the way of bustling oases or creatures hiding beneath the sand. No, the very land seemed to breathe, its shifting dunes forming patterns that were almost deliberate, as if the planet itself was awakening. Dr. Even Cross sprinted over the uneven terrain, the alien woman, Kalia, leaning heavily against him. Her golden eyes flickered with exhaustion, yet they burned with an urgency that could not be ignored. Behind them, the low, chittering clicks of pursuit grew louder. "How many are there?" Even asked through gritted teeth, stealing a glance over his shoulder. Kalia's voice was faint but sharp. "Enough to end you, human. Move faster." Even didn't need to be told twice. The insect-like creatures, with their glistening carapaces and jagged limbs, were gaining ground. He could hear the rhythmic thud of their legs against the sand, and the occasional guttural growl that sent chills up his spine. "What's the plan here?" Even demanded, his voice tinged with frustration. "Running doesn't seem to be working out." Kalia's lips curved into what might have been a smirk if she hadn't looked half dead. "Run. Smarter, not harder." Before Even could respond, Kalia extended her arm and pointed toward a distant ridge. A faint glow emanated from its base, pulsing rhythmically like a beacon. "There," she said. "The gateway. It will slow them." Even squinted at the ridge, doubt creeping into his mind. The glow wasn't natural, and the idea of heading toward an unknown energy source while being chased by murderous alien creatures didn't sit well with him. But then again, he didn't have better options. "Great," he muttered. "Glowing Death Ridge it is." The sand beneath their feet grew firmer as they approached the ridge, the swirling dunes giving way to cracked, glassy ground. Even realized the terrain wasn't natural. It had been melted, perhaps in some ancient conflict, or by a force he couldn't comprehend. "Is this safe?" he asked, his voice betraying his skepticism. Kalia gave him a withering look. "Would you rather die slower?" Fair point, Even thought. The glow intensified as they neared the base of the ridge. Strange, angular structures jutted out of the ground, their surfaces covered in symbols similar to those on the artifact in Even's pack. Kalia stumbled, her strength nearly gone, but she gestured toward a narrow entrance carved into the rock. "Inside," she said, her voice barely audible. Even dragged her through the opening just as the first of the creatures crested the ridge behind them. The air inside was cooler, heavy with the scent of ancient stone and something metallic. The passage sloped downward, illuminated by the same faint glow that had guided them. "What is this place?" Even asked, his voice echoing. Kalia leaned against the wall, catching her breath. "An old defense corridor, built to contain the weapon. If we reach the core before them, we have a chance." Even frowned. "A chance to do what?" "Stop it. Destroy it." Kalia's expression darkened. "Control it, or ensure no one can." The implications of her words hit Avon like a hammer. This wasn't just about survival anymore. Whatever this weapon was, it had the power to change everything, or destroy it all. The clicking sounds of their pursuers echoed down the passage, growing louder by the second. Avon tightened his grip on Kalia's arm. "We don't have time for a history lesson. Let's move." The passage opened into a vast chamber, its walls adorned with glowing glyphs that shifted and danced as if alive. In the center was a massive console, its surface covered in alien controls. A crystalline pillar rose from the floor, pulsating with energy. Kalia's eyes lit up. The core. Avon approached cautiously, the artifact in his pack vibrating as if in resonance with the pillar. "What do I do?" he asked. Kalia stepped forward, her strength seemingly renewed by the proximity to the core. "The artifact. It is the key. Place it on the console. Quickly." Avon hesitated. "And then what?" Her gaze softened, a rare moment of vulnerability breaking through her stoic exterior. "Then we find out if we're too late." The creature's screeches grew deafening as they poured into the chamber, their claws skittering against the stone floor. Avon had no time to think. He pulled the artifact from his pack and slammed it onto the console. The room exploded with light. The creatures froze, their bodies convulsing as the energy from the core washed over them. The glyphs on the walls flared, projecting images of planets, star systems, and a weapon so massive it defied comprehension. Kalia stepped toward the console, her hand trembling as she reached for a series of controls. "This is it," she said softly. "The moment they feared, and the moment they created." Avon turned to her, his voice a mix of anger and desperation. "What does that mean? What are we about to do?" Kalia didn't answer. Her hand hovered over a single glowing glyph, her expression unreadable. "A choice," she said finally. "To save, or to end." Before Avon could respond, the chamber shook violently. The core's energy surged, and the glyphs on the walls began to fracture. "Time's up," Kalia said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Prepare yourself, human. This is only the beginning." Betrayal in the sands. The silence was deafening. Avon Cross stood frozen, his hand hovering over the artifact embedded in the alien console. The crystalline core pulsed steadily, casting an eerie glow that painted the ancient chamber in hues of blue and gold. Beside him, Kalia's breathing was shallow, her golden eyes fixed on the swirling symbols projected around them. Symbols that seemed to dance with purpose, whispering secrets from a long-dead civilization. But the silence didn't last. A slow clap echoed through the chamber, its sharp, deliberate rhythm cutting through the tense atmosphere like a blade. Avon turned sharply, his heart sinking as a familiar figure emerged from the shadows. "Merrick," Avon said, his voice laced with disbelief. "Dr. Cross," Merrick replied, his tone dripping with smug satisfaction. He was dressed in a sleek, tactical suit that glinted faintly under the core's light, and the faint hum of a concealed weapon buzzed from his belt. His eyes darted to the artifact, then to Kalia. Well, you've been busy." Avon stepped protectively in front of Kalia. "What are you doing here?" Merrick smirked, casually gesturing to the ancient ruins around them. "You didn't think you were the only one interested in Torvakian technology, did you? I've been tracking you since you left the colony." He took a step closer, his gaze narrowing. "And now, I see you found something far more valuable than I ever imagined." Kalia's expression hardened, and she spoke in a low, cautious tone. "He is not your ally." "Yeah, I got that," Avon muttered. Merrick's smirk widened. "Oh, come on, Avon. Don't be so dramatic. You and I both know what this is. He gestured to the core, his voice tinged with awe. This is the salvation humanity has been waiting for. A weapon of this magnitude, it could secure Earth's place in the galaxy. No more war. No more threats. We'd finally be untouchable. Even shook his head, anger rising in his chest. You have no idea what you're talking about. This isn't just a weapon. It's a ticking time bomb. Kalia says it destroyed her entire civilization. If you activate it, it won't save anyone. Merrick's gaze flicked to Kalia, a glimmer of contempt in his eyes. And you're trusting her? A relic of a failed species. Come on, even. Use your head. This creature isn't our ally. She's a liability. Kalia's golden eyes blazed with fury, but she stayed silent, her hands clenched at her sides. Even stepped forward, his voice firm. If you think I'm going to let you turn this thing on, you're out of your mind. Merrick chuckled, his hand moving to the weapon at his belt. Let me. Even. I don't need your permission. In one swift motion, Merrick drew his weapon, a sleek plasma pistol, and aimed it at Even. Step aside, he said coldly. Now. Even's mind raced. He glanced at Kalia, who was already moving subtly, her fingers twitching as if summoning some hidden reserve of energy. He took a deep breath, stalling for time. Merrick, listen to me, Even said, his voice steady despite the growing tension. You don't understand what you're dealing with. This isn't just a weapon. It's alive. The artifact, the core, they're connected. If you activate it, you could trigger something far worse than you're imagining. Merrick scoffed. Spare me the lecture. I've read the same legends you have, Cross. Power this immense always comes with risks. But that's a price I'm willing to pay. Before Even could respond, Kalia moved. Her hand shot forward, and a burst of golden energy erupted from her palm, knocking the pistol from Merrick's hand. He stumbled back, eyes wide with shock. That was a warning, Kalia said, her voice low and dangerous. Next time, I will not miss. Merrick's shock quickly turned to rage. He reached for a communicator on his wrist, shouting into it, "Bring the team in. Now." The chamber trembled as footsteps echoed from the corridor. Even's heart sank as heavily armed mercenaries filed into the room, their weapons trained on him and Kalia. Merrick straightened, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. You're outnumbered, Cross. Hand over the artifact, and maybe I'll let you walk out of here alive. Kalia stepped forward, her golden eyes glowing fiercely. This is not your fight, human, she said, her voice calm but resolute. But if you force it, you will lose. The air in the chamber grew thick with tension as the mercenaries raised their weapons, and the core's light pulsed faster, as if reacting to the escalating conflict. Even clenched his fists, his mind racing for a plan. Merrick's grin faltered for a moment, but he quickly recovered. You think you can scare me with a light show? He sneered. I have the numbers. You have nothing. Even exchanged a glance with Kalia, a silent understanding passing between them. You're wrong, Merrick, Even said, his voice steady. We have the one thing you'll never understand. And what's that? Merrick snapped. Kalia smiled faintly, her energy surging as the glyphs on the walls began to shift and glow brighter. The will to protect what is sacred. Before Merrick could react, the chamber exploded with golden light, and chaos erupted. The weapon stirs. The core was awake now. Even Cross felt the hum of its energy thrumming in his chest, like a second heartbeat. The glyphs on the chamber walls pulsed in time with the artifact on the console, projecting shifting constellations and alien diagrams that filled the air with faint, glowing trails. Kalia stood before the crystalline pillar, her hands raised, her golden eyes locked on the swirling symbols. She looked like a conductor guiding an orchestra of chaos. But the harmony was short-lived. A low, ominous rumble echoed through the chamber as the floor beneath their feet began to vibrate. Even turned to Kalia, his voice tight with urgency. "What's happening? What are you doing?" Kalia didn't look at him, her focus entirely on the core. "Not me," she said, her voice steady but laced with tension. "The weapon, it senses conflict. It responds to the presence of those unworthy." Even's stomach tightened. "Unworthy? You mean Merrick?" At the far end of the chamber, Merrick and his mercenaries regrouped, their weapons trained on the core. The glow of their tactical helmets flickered as the energy in the room began to interfere with their systems. Merrick, undeterred, pointed toward the console. "Take them out," he barked. The mercenaries opened fire, but the chamber itself reacted before Kalia could. Arcs of golden energy shot from the walls, forming a protective barrier around the console and the core. The projectiles dissolved on impact, leaving the mercenaries momentarily stunned. "This isn't just a weapon," Even muttered, watching the display in disbelief. "It's alive." Kalia finally turned to him, her face grim. "Alive, yes. And aware. It remembers what was done to it. To us." Before Even could ask what she meant, the glyphs on the walls shifted violently, their glowing patterns turning jagged and sharp. A deep, resonant voice, ancient and guttural, filled the chamber, speaking in a language Even couldn't understand. Kalia, however, froze, her expression unreadable. "What's it saying?" Even demanded. Kalia's gaze darkened. "It asks why it should trust you." "Me," Even said, incredulous. "I didn't do anything. Merrick's the one trying to turn it on." Kalia shook her head. "The artifact binds you to it now. It sees you as its wielder. It tests you, human." Even's pulse quickened as the voice grew louder, its tone shifting from inquiry to warning. The glyphs on the walls flared brighter, and the ground cracked open in jagged lines, revealing streams of molten light below. Merrick, undeterred, shouted above the chaos. "This is our moment. Focus fire on the artifact." As the mercenaries advanced, the core reacted violently. A shockwave erupted from the pillar, sending several of them flying. Merrick stumbled but managed to hold his ground, his eyes narrowing as he stared at Even. "Whatever it's doing, you need to stop it," Merrick snarled. Even ignored him, turning to Kalia. "What do I do? How do I pass this test?" Kalia hesitated, her gaze flicking between Even and the core. "You must prove your intent. It responds to the heart, not the mind. Show it your truth." Even blinked. "My truth? What does that even mean?" Before she could answer, the core's energy surged again, this time forming tendrils of light that snaked toward Even. He stepped back instinctively, but Kalia caught his arm. "Do not fear it," she said softly. "Step forward, or all is lost." The tendrils reached him, wrapping around his arms and chest. They weren't solid, but they carried a weight that pressed down on him like the force of a tidal wave. Images flooded his mind. Scenes of destruction, betrayal, and loss. He saw cities crumbling under alien skies, the cries of 1,000 voices silenced in an instant. And then he saw Kalia, standing alone in the ruins, her face a mask of anguish. The voice boomed again, this time directly in his mind. It spoke a single word that resonated with unbearable clarity. "Choose." Even gasped, the weight of the decision crashing over him. He looked at Kalia, whose gaze was steady but filled with unspoken pain. He glanced at Merrick, who was still trying to rally his men despite the growing chaos. The core's tendrils tightened, and the voice demanded again. "Choose." I choose to protect," Even said, his voice shaking but firm. "I don't want this power, but I won't let it destroy anyone else." The tendrils pulsed, then receded. The glyphs on the walls shifted once more, their jagged patterns smoothing into gentle arcs. The molten cracks in the floor sealed themselves, and the core's glow softened. Kalia let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "You passed," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Even turned to her, his face pale. "And if I hadn't?" Kalia's gaze lingered on the core. Then this chamber would be your tomb. Merrick, realizing he was outmatched, cursed under his breath and motioned for his men to retreat. But as they moved toward the exit, the core's light flared once more, and the voice echoed throughout the chamber. Not all may leave. The chamber trembled again, and even knew this wasn't over. Not yet. Sacrifice and revelation. The air in the chamber was heavy, almost suffocating, as though the ancient ruins themselves were holding their breath. The crystalline core pulsed steadily, its light casting long, flickering shadows that danced like specters across the cracked stone walls. Even Cross could feel the weight of the artifact in his hands, its vibrations growing stronger with every second. It was as if the object was alive, urging him toward a decision he didn't fully understand. Kalia stood at the edge of the platform, her golden eyes fixed on the swirling glyphs projected by the core. She looked both resolute and fragile, like a statue carved from light and shadow. The silence between them was deafening, punctuated only by the faint hum of the ancient machine. Even broke the silence first. "We stopped, Merrick. The mercenaries are gone. Isn't that enough? We don't have to do this." Kalia turned to him slowly, her expression unreadable. "You still don't understand," she said, her voice as soft as a whisper yet carrying the weight of centuries. "The weapon is awake. It will not simply go back to sleep. Its purpose has been reignited." Even frowned, his frustration bubbling to the surface. "Then we shut it down. Destroy it, if we have to. Isn't that why we're here?" Kalia's gaze softened, a flicker of sadness crossing her face. "You think it's that simple?" She stepped closer, the glow of the core reflecting off her shimmering skin. "This weapon is not just a machine, human. It is bound to me, to my people, its creators. To stop it, I must sever that bond." Evan's chest tightened. "What does that mean?" "It means," Kalia said, her voice trembling slightly, "I must give myself to it. My life force will become its prison. Only then will it sleep again." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Evan stared at her, shaking his head in disbelief. "No, no, there has to be another way. We can figure this out together. You don't have to." "There is no time, Evan," she interrupted, her tone firm but not unkind. "The core is unstable. The longer it remains active, the greater the risk to this world, and beyond." Evan took a step toward her, his hands gripping the artifact tightly. "You're asking me to just let you die? After everything we've been through?" Kalia smiled faintly, a bittersweet expression that made her seem impossibly human. "I was already gone," she said. "You gave me another chance to fight for what mattered. And now I can finish what I started." Before Evan could respond, the core's light intensified, and the chamber began to tremble. The glyphs on the walls shifted erratically, their once elegant patterns becoming jagged and chaotic. The hum of the core grew louder, rising to an almost unbearable pitch. Kalia turned back to the core, her hands glowing with the same golden energy that had saved them before. "It's starting," she said. "The weapon is trying to activate. If it completes its cycle, it will send out a signal, a call to the stars. Others will come. It cannot be allowed." Evan's mind raced. He wanted to stop her, to find some way to keep her alive, but every instinct told him she was right. Still, the thought of losing her felt like a betrayal of everything they had fought for. "Let me do it," he said suddenly, his voice shaking. Kalia turned to him, her eyes wide with surprise. "What?" "Let me take your place," Evan said, stepping closer. "If it needs a life force, use mine. You said the artifact bound me to it, right? Maybe that's enough." Kalia shook her head, a mixture of gratitude and sorrow in her expression. "You are brave, human. But the core would reject you. It knows its creators, and it knows me." She reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. Her touch was warm, comforting, yet heavy with finality. "Your part in this is not over. The artifact chose you for a reason. When I am gone, It will guide you to the answers you seek. Evan's throat tightened, and he struggled to find the right words. Kalia, you have already done enough, she said gently, more than I could have asked. With that, she turned back to the core, her golden energy intertwining with its brilliant light. The room erupted in a cascade of color as the core responded, its chaotic hum giving way to a steady rhythmic pulse. Kalia stepped onto the platform, her body glowing brighter with each step. Even watched helplessly as she raised her hands, her voice echoing through the chamber in a language he couldn't understand. The glyphs on the walls flared one final time before dissolving into streams of light that spiraled into the core. For a moment, everything was still. Then, with a blinding flash, the core dimmed, its light fading to a soft, steady glow. The chamber fell silent, and the tremors ceased. Even staggered back, his vision blurred by tears he hadn't realized were falling. Kalia was gone. The artifact in his hands pulsed faintly, its light now muted but steady. As Evan stared at it, a single thought echoed in his mind, a voice that was not his own but unmistakably hers. This is not the end, human. Protect what matters. Evan looked up at the core, now dormant and quiet. The weight of her sacrifice pressed down on him, but so did a newfound determination. She had trusted him with something greater than himself, and he wouldn't let her down. As he stepped out of the chamber and into the desert night, the stars above seemed brighter than before. But Evan knew the journey was far from over. Another chance. The stars seemed closer tonight, brighter, as if the galaxy itself was watching. Evan Cross stood at the edge of the ancient ruins, the cold desert wind tugging at his jacket. The silence around him was profound, broken only by the faint hum of the artifact in his hands. Its glow was soft now, a faint heartbeat of light that pulsed against his palm. A lingering echo of Kalia's presence. She was gone. Or was she? Evan's thoughts churned as he stared out at the endless dunes. The core lay dormant beneath his feet, sealed by her sacrifice. The weapon had been stopped, its destructive cycle broken. Yet, the words she had left him with, whispered in his mind at the very end, refused to fade. This is not the end, human. Protect what matters. What had she meant? Protect what? The artifact. The knowledge buried in the ruins? Or something far larger, something that extended beyond this forsaken planet? A sudden vibration startled him, and he glanced down at the artifact. Its faint glow began to intensify, casting intricate patterns of light across the sand. The glyphs etched into its surface shifted, rearranging themselves into a configuration he had never seen before. What now? Evan muttered, gripping the artifact tighter. The light from the artifact projected upward, forming a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Evan's eyes widened as he recognized familiar star systems, their positions highlighted in soft, golden light. But at the center of the projection, one star pulsed brighter than the rest, surrounded by swirling symbols that seemed to ripple with urgency. Kalia's voice echoed faintly in his mind. Another chance awaits. Follow the path. Evan took a shaky breath, the realization dawning on him. The artifact wasn't just a key to the weapon. It was a guide, a map, a message, and whatever Kalia had set in motion, it wasn't finished. Before he could process it fully, the ground beneath him shifted slightly, and a faint tremor ran through the ruins. Evan instinctively stepped back, scanning the area. The desert was eerily still, but the air felt different, charged, like the calm before a storm. He turned his attention back to the map, studying the pulsing star at its center. It was far, impossibly far, beyond any charted routes he had ever seen. Yet the artifact seemed certain, its glow growing steadier as if urging him forward. Another chance, Evan murmured. Another chance for what? As if in response, the glyphs on the artifact shifted again, and for a brief moment, a figure appeared within the golden projection. It was her, Kalia. Her form was faint, translucent, but unmistakable. She looked at him, her golden eyes filled with the same resolve she had shown in her final moments. "You are not alone," her voice echoed, calm and certain. "The path is yours to walk, but the choice is yours to make. Protect what matters, even, always." The projection faded, and the artifact's glow returned to its faint, rhythmic pulse. Even stood motionless, the weight of her words sinking in. He had spent his entire life searching for answers, for meaning in the ruins of the past. Now, for the first time, the future stretched before him, unknown, vast, and filled with purpose. He glanced back at the ruins one last time, a silent farewell to the place where everything had changed. The stars above seemed to guide him, their light converging on the horizon, where his ship awaited. Even tightened his grip on the artifact, his resolve hardening. He didn't know what lay ahead, or if he was truly ready for it, but he owed it to Kalia, to her sacrifice, her trust, to find out. As he turned and began his journey across the sands, the desert winds carried a faint whisper, so soft he almost missed it.